address in Baku shocked Red Bull with what he said after crossing the finish line? What seemed like a simple celebration hid a much deeper message for the team's future. Before continuing, tell me in the comments, do you think Max is more connected than ever with Red Bull, or is he already thinking about a change? The key question is, what do these communications from Baku reveal about what could happen with Verstappen in Formula One? Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In this video, we'll break down Max Verstappen's radio communications during the 2025 Azerbaijan GP, a weekend that not only gave Red Bull victory, but also showed how the team's way of working has changed under Laurent Mekies. To understand what happened in Baku with Max Verstappen, we must first consider the scenario Red Bull faced before the weekend. The team had been going through weeks of doubt, with a car that had shown instability on street circuits, and with results that failed to convince fans or management. The overwhelming dominance of previous years seemed to have waned, and the question hovering in the paddock was clear. Was Red Bull still the absolute benchmark, or was it beginning to lose ground? Verstappen, aware of these criticisms and under pressure to prove he was still in complete control, arrived in Azerbaijan with a changed mindset. From free practice, he began sending messages to his team about more positive sensations behind the wheel, pointing out that the car responded with greater stability and allowed him to attack corners with more confidence. The confidence he conveyed on the radio was the first sign that something had changed in the RB21 after the latest technical updates. Qualifying was the key moment that confirmed this resurgence. While other drivers suffered from windy conditions and a lack of grip on an ever-unpredictable circuit, Verstappen remained cool, precise, and lethal. He made no mistakes, took advantage of the car's stability, and delivered a lap that not only gave him pole position but also sent a clear message to the rest of the field. The champion was back to his best. If there was one thing that made Verstappen's victory in Baku unforgettable, it was the radio communications heard throughout the weekend. From the first lap, it was clear that we weren't dealing with a simple driver following orders, but with a four-time Formula One world champion who mastered every detail of the situation. As soon as Oscar Piastri hit the barriers, engineer Gianpiero Lambiase relayed the information with surgical precision. Double yellow flags, a possible safety car, and the exact calculation of the distance to Carlos Sainz. Verstappen's response was brief, concise, and forceful, demonstrating that he absorbed all the information while continuing to push to the limit. Throughout the opening stint, another striking moment was the constant discussion about the condition of the tires. Lambiase insisted on taking care of the compounds and moderating his use of the accelerator in certain sections. Max's reaction wasn't one of simple mechanical obedience, but rather one of confirmation with short phrases that conveyed confidence and complete knowledge of what he was doing. That confidence is what differentiates a driver who simply follows orders from a champion who understands the reason for each instruction. The climactic moment came when the checkered flag waved and Verstappen released all the pent-up tension with a shout that still resonates. "We're on fire!" It wasn't just a euphoric celebration, it was a message full of meaning. It represented Red Bull's rebirth after difficult weeks and the feeling that, at least for that moment, everything was back under control. The team responded calmly and proudly, aware that this victory not only earned points but also restored confidence to the entire project. One of the most decisive factors explaining the change in Red Bull's communications has a name: Laurent Mekies. Since his arrival as team principal, the way of interacting between the pit wall and the cockpit has undergone a notable shift. It's no longer just a matter of transmitting dry instructions or decisions made by simulation algorithms. There's now a much more human and collaborative exchange that gives Verstappen a leading role in decision-making. This change is no coincidence. It's the mark of a leader with an engineering background who understands the importance of listening to the driver and using their sensations as vital input. The radios in Baku were the best example of this new era. While in the past there was a certain rigidity in the responses, now a more open tone is perceived, with direct questions seeking to extract information from Max that the data alone doesn't reveal. Mekies knows that telemetry is powerful, but also that no machine can replicate the sensitivity of a driver competing at over 300 kilometers per hour. That's why he has fostered a communication style that values every comment Verstappen makes, generating a richer and more efficient feedback loop. His post-race comments confirmed this. Mekies didn't just talk about the result, but highlighted how qualifying in extremely windy conditions was a masterclass from Max, and how that kind of performance is only possible when there is absolute confidence in the car and the team behind it. This way of expressing himself reflects that work is not measured solely in tenths of a second gained on the track, but also in the quality of the driver-engineer relationship. By highlighting this aspect, Makis is reinforcing the idea that Red Bull must operate as a united unit, where everyone contributes and everyone learns. The impact of this transformation goes beyond the technical. The improvement in communication is directly linked to the team's ability to react in real time, adapt to strategy changes, and get the most out of the RB21. In other words, Makis isn't just modernizing the language of radio, he's laying the groundwork for a Red Bull that's more flexible, more human, and much harder to beat. The radios in Baku not only reflected the emotion of the moment, but also provided a glimpse into the path Red Bull is charting for the future. Every word from Verstappen, every response from Lambiasi, and every nuance in the team's reaction displayed a harmony that goes beyond the immediate. What was heard in those messages confirmed that Red Bull continues to build a project around its star driver, but it also revealed the extent to which they depend on him to maintain their competitive level. The euphoric message of "We're on fire" wasn't an isolated phrase. It was a cry of confidence that marked a rebirth after difficult months, but it also served as a warning to the rest of the field. Red Bull is back and hungrier than ever. However, that same exclamation is also a reminder that the current success rests largely on the shoulders of a driver capable of squeezing every tenth of a second out of the car. If Verstappen weren't there, it's hard to imagine the RB21 achieving the same results. These radio stations also provide an important psychological nuance. In a sport where constant communication can define a winning strategy or a painful defeat, Red Bull has managed to turn its internal messages into a source of collective motivation. It's not just about talking about tires, yellow flags, or setups, but about generating an atmosphere where every victory feels like a team-building experience. This feeling strengthens group cohesion and increases resilience to future crises, which could be key when less favorable circuits arrive. What is clear is that these communications were not mere anecdotal details. They reflect the direction Red Bull will take in the coming months and how they intend to maintain their hegemony. The Baku radio stations are a preview that the immediate future will be marked by an even closer relationship between Verstappen and his team, with an approach that blends the technical with the emotional to maintain their advantage in Formula One. After what happened in Baku, all eyes are on what's next for Verstappen and Red Bull. The next big challenge will be Singapore, a historically difficult circuit for the team due to its high downforce demands and extreme conditions, making it one of the most demanding tracks on the calendar. There, renewed confidence and a positive atmosphere on the radio won't be enough. It will be necessary to see if the technical improvements introduced since Monza can sustain performance on a track that exposes every weakness. That will be the real test of whether Baku's resurgence is the start of a trend or simply an oasis in the midst of a season full of ups and downs. Verstappen's messages already hint at a certain caution. Rather than proclaiming himself invincible, he acknowledged that Singapore represents a completely different challenge, and that they will have to work on specific setups to be up to the task. This reveals that, although Red Bull has regained a positive feeling, they are still aware that their performance window is delicate, and that a small preparation error can mean the difference between fighting for victory or being relegated. This self-criticism, conveyed both on the radio and in subsequent statements, is a sign of maturity within the team and a demonstration that they are not simply driven by the euphoria of the latest victory. Furthermore, a scenario with broader consequences looms on the horizon. If Red Bull manages to consolidate the stability of its car and maintain the internal motivation seen in Baku, it could regain absolute dominance. But if they fail at circuits like Marina Bay, doubts will return. Max Verstappen's victory in Azerbaijan wasn't just another triumph added to his record. It reflected a profound transformation in the way Red Bull understands communication, strategy, and teamwork. The radio reports over the weekend left no doubt. The bond between driver and engineers is at a point of maturity rarely seen in modern Formula One. What we heard was the combination of technical precision, mutual trust, and a renewed energy that allowed pressure to be turned into motivation. The message of "We're on fire" remained the most powerful statement of the Grand Prix, because it not only celebrated victory, but also represented the rebirth of a team that had been under scrutiny and is now once again proving it has the talent and organization to make a difference. But what's most significant is that this euphoria is accompanied by a more calculated plan, influenced by Laurent Mekies and a philosophy that places the driver at the center of the project. That mix of emotion and strategy could be the key that decides the course of the championship. Even so, we mustn't forget that what happened in Baku is only part of the story. The upcoming circuits will test whether this Red Bull is ready to sustain this level in all types of conditions or if doubts will reappear in more demanding venues like Singapore. There, the true consistency of the project will be measured, and we'll know if what we saw in Azerbaijan is the beginning of a new era or a blip in an unpredictable season. Now it's your turn. Do you think this new Red Bull is ready to regain its absolute dominance, or do you think what we saw in Baku was just a flash in the pan? Let me know your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.